you have a chance
Well,
to meet with any of the, people who were involved in New York exhibition, like Jonas Mekas or Dan Talbot or Herman G. Weinberg, anyone like that?
no, I didn't, but there's a story. Herman Weinberg had a Baltimore connection. I don't know if you know about it.
The Little Theater?
Yeah, he managed a little theater, and he met his wife here. So, and he was one of the guys who did those limited subtitles on a lot of those early prints. No, I never met him. And, no, I never met Dan Talbot. My 2 degrees of separation from Dan Talbot would be Dennis and Amy, because Amy worked for Dan Talbot. Dennis's wife. What's Amy's last name? I can't remember. Thank you. I just went blank. Yeah, because he just died, and they wrote some stuff about him. But I never met any of those people up there. In D.C., the closest. I mean, we used to go to a lot of films at the AFI. This is when it was still in Kennedy Center, in this rear little theater that had auto body parts, fiberglass auto body parts hanging on the wall like his sound baffles. But I used to see Michael Jack, who imported some Japanese films and was a big expert on Japanese films. He might be one of the commentators on Seven Samurai. But he did programming there, and I used to talk to him a little bit. But didn't get to, one other time, it was down in D.C. too. There's a German experimental woman film director, Ulrike Ottinger, who might have died in the last couple of years, I don't know. But there was a professor at UMBC who taught German film, and she knew Ulrike Ottinger, and a bunch of us got to have dinner with her in D.C., and it was after this film, a great film that doesn't get shown called Joanna d'Arc of Mongolia, which I had my parents see because it's such a fun, it's sort of experimental, but it's a narrative film. But it's such a likable film, but it was the last film that French actress, that's not helping you, who played, I think it's Coming to the Parkway, it's got the long title, Rue de Commerce, Jean Dielman, Delphine Seyrig. I think her last film was this Joanna d'Arc of Mongolia, and she died right after, and I remember Ulrike Ottinger was very sad. But I didn't have too many experiences like that, and nothing that really helped with anything we were doing. Baltimore was still a little small town, I guess, back then for film stuff. But, George he met some people when he'd go to Telluride. That was probably, and he was the only one who did that, I think. Mike Giuliano went with him sometimes, and he was on the committee. Do you know Mike? He's a local writer. He used to review everything, film, books, everything. You could get hold of him. He was on he was on the program committee for a bit. He was like about 6 or 7 years behind me at Hopkins. I run into him at the movies mostly. He lives on Calvert Street. But he would probably remember some stuff. That was one of the experiences. Another trip to AFI. Truffaut was appearing. It was probably just a couple of years before he died. And there was a snowstorm. It was just starting when we drove down there. And we ran into Mike Giuliano, a couple friends of mine and I ran into Mike Giuliano, and he didn't have a car, so we were giving him a ride home. It took about 6 hours to get back to Baltimore because you couldn't see 2 inches in front of the car, and we got so lost. But it was still a good experience. I got this see, because they used to have directors down at AFI for special things. Saw Bertolucci. He could barely speak English then. He did a lot of motioning with his hands. He was talking how he cut down 1900 the week it opened in New York because, well, it's back to its 5-hour version, but he cut a lot out before it got shown up there. And he was doing like fast heartbeat and slow heartbeat and stuff. So I did get to see people, but there was not anything, we could partner with anybody with, except, well, like Vendor's appearance was the closest thing.